We'll figure it out. Good evening, ladies. Welcome to the second week of our beekeeping classes. My name's Sue Olson, and tonight we are going to talk about beekeeping equipment. This is all brought by the Women Beekeepers of West Virginia. All right, I'm a retired teacher and I like my books, but two books, when you're just starting off on this adventure. On the left is Beekeeping Basics. It's put out by Penn State University Extension. Affordable book, has everything in there you need to know. On the right is First Lessons in Beekeeping. It was originally published in 1917. You can get it from Dedant. It's less than $10, and it is just a wonderful plethora of useful information for a beginning beekeeper. Okay, so tonight I'm talking about bee equipment, and I'm really focusing on the first couple years you're keeping bees, keeping things nice and simple, even though there's a million different ways to do things. Because the first couple years you keep bees, you really just want to learn, how do my bees work? So before the traditional hives we see today, bees were kept in logs, bees were kept in things called skeps, straw baskets, all kinds of things. But if you wanted to inspect your hive or to harvest honey, you had to destroy the hive and crush the comb. Well, in 1852, old Lorenzo Langstroth came along. He designed a hive that was based on something called bee space. He figured out that bees work happily in an area of 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. That's the space between your frames. That's the space between your combs. And as long as you have 1/4 to a 3/8 of an inch, your bees can move around inside that hive. If you have an opening smaller than 1/4 inch, your bees are going to propolis it shut. Propolis is a resin. They use it as glue in the hive. They will glue it shut. If the space is larger than 3/8 of an inch, they're going to build wax comb probably where you don't want it. So this is the traditional hive that we use called the Langstroth. Okay, the picture on the left here is from the Penn State book, and it goes over a hive pieces from bottom to top. The bottom is the hive stand. When I think of a hive stand, I think of what I'm putting my hive actually on. We're going to look at the bottom board, a deep hive body, a what we put our honey in, a super. We're going to look at a queen excluder, an inner cover, and that outer telescoping cover. One of the expenses when you start bees is the physical woodenware itself and purchasing your first bees. If you or someone close to you is handy woodworker, this is a great inexpensive book called Building Beehives for Dummies, and it gives plans, measurements, something you can look at. Okay, so what are we going to learn tonight? We're going to learn the parts of a hive: hive stand, bottom board, hive bodies, frames and comb, queen excluder, inner cover, outer cover, and feeders. Ancillary equipment, your smoke or your hive tool, and then your protective clothing, veils, jackets, suits, and gloves. Now, I'm going to give you a little warning tonight. My pictures are from my equipment, and I don't always do everything right. Some of it's not painted, some of it's going to be dirty, some of it's going to be old, but you're going to get the idea. Hive stands. So when you're going to get a hive, Deb's going to go over in a week or so where's the best place to put them. But you got to put them somewhere, and you're just not going to set them on the ground. So the very first picture is what I did a long time ago when I first started keeping hives. I put down 4 cinder blocks. I thought I was doing it right because they were high enough that skunks shouldn't be bothering them. But I live in southwestern PA. That's on a hill. The ground gets wet, and your hive needs to be, for the most part, level. And over time, those blocks, they sink and they shift, and that's not a good design. The middle picture, I got a little bit better. I leveled the ground out. I put down 2 cinder blocks. I put down rough cut 2x6s, and they worked for a while, but then my wood started to rot, and you don't want a hive collapsing because that makes a big mess. The last picture shows where I finally built a stronger, sturdier hive stand that can hold 1,000+ pounds and it's not going anywhere. But go and Google this. There's a million different ways you can make hive stands that cost very little money to purchasing pre-made hive stands that are ridiculously expensive. Okay, so now I got a place to put my bees. First piece of equipment I'm putting down is my bottom board. That top left picture is a very dirty, old, solid bottom board. It is a solid piece of wood. To the right is a screen bottom board. And either one is perfectly fine for you to use. There are beekeepers that swear by one or swear by the other. Again, it's going to be something you will learn over time what you like the best. The screen bottom board, if you look at that bottom picture, that piece of chloroplast there, it slides underneath that screen. So if I'm checking for mites or I'm checking for activity in my hive, I can literally slide that board out and look at debris and whatever else I could find. But the first part there is my bottom board. After I got my bottom board down, I'm going to put a box on, and those boxes are referred to as hive bodies, and they come in 3 standard sizes. You have a deep box, which is commonly used for brood rearing. You have mediums, which some people use for broods, but are commonly used to collect honey in. And then there's these boxes called shallows, and typically they're not used. They're really, really, really small. You can also have a nucleus box, a nuke or a nuck, as some people say, that holds 5 frames. This is where you're going to have to start making your first decisions. When you get boxes, they can hold 10 frames, typically, or 8 frames. You can't mix or match 10 and 8 frame boxes. So you have to decide, am I going to have boxes that hold 10 frames or boxes that hold 8 frames? Some people say the 8 frames are lighter to lift the box. It has, 8 frames of bees in it. I run 10 boxes, and when I need to lift a box, I pull out 4 frames and put them into an empty box, which makes the box lighter. But something you're going to pay attention to is, do your boxes hold 8 frames or 10 frames? The upper right-hand picture is 2 deep boxes, 2 brood boxes typically. Is how most of you will keep your bees when you first start this journey. So I have my bottom board. I have my boxes. Now I need to put something in it. So the left picture is a wooden frame. And again, you buy your frames according to the size of your box. So that wooden frame consists of a top bar, 2 end bars, and a bottom bar. Within that frame, you're going to put in foundation. Foundation can come as either plastic or beeswax. As a beginning beekeeper, you are going to typically start with a plastic foundation. Plastic foundation, as you can see, comes both in light and dark. It comes in waxed and unwaxed. In my brood boxes, I like to use the dark foundation because when I'm looking for eggs that the queen has laid, it's much easier to see a little white egg with my old eyes against that dark. In my honey boxes, I typically use the light colored foundation just because I like it. If you are starting new, you don't have any foundations pulled off with wax yet. So when you put that plastic foundation in there, even if it comes pre-waxed, you want to find wax from somebody somewhere and rub that wax onto your foundations to make it more attractive for your bees. And we'll go over more of that in future classes. Okay, you can build your boxes and frames. By buying equipment unassembled, you can save money. As you can see in this picture, the left picture is of frames and the right picture is of boxes. That's a good thing because I have the equipment. It's a bad thing if I don't get it built, because when spring comes and I need equipment, it does me no good if it needs assembled. When you assemble it, there's many jigs, rigs, YouTube videos, you're nailing and gluing together wood. The glue that we use needs to be a waterproof glue. This Titebond 3 is a very popular brand that's used. And then I keep my nails separated. I have larger nails to put together my boxes, and I have smaller nails to put together my frames. A piece of equipment you're going to see is a queen excluder. This is this metal with these slats. Some people use them, some people do not, but as a new beekeeper, at least you should know what they are. The worker bees can climb through these slats, but my fertilized queen with her big abdomen should not be able to get through. So the purpose of a queen excluder is to exclude the queen from where you do not want her to be. People will use them to keep the queen down in the brood boxes and not up in your honey supers because she will lay brood. If she wants up in those honey supers, no big deal. It hatches out, then you could collect your honey. But some people prefer to keep them out. Again, this is one of those things. Some beekeepers use them, some do not. So I have my bottom board, I have my boxes, I have my frames filled with foundation. The next thing I'm going to put on is my inner cover. The inner cover rests on top of your uppermost box and beneath your outer telescoping cover. This inner cover prevents your bees from gluing down your main outer cover. Whenever you put this wood together, the bees propolize it. They take that plant resin and glue it shut. So this inner cover provides a breaking spot for that. Your outer cover, as you can see in this picture, is on top of this box. It helps protect my hive from the weather. It typically has metal that has been attached to the top of it. And you'll see that some beekeepers use a simpler cover called a migratory lid. Again, as a beginning beekeeper, unless that's equipment that you've gotten from somebody, you're typically going to have the setup that I just showed you. All right, so now I've got my bottom board, I've got my boxes, I've got my frame and combs in there, I got my inner cover on, I've got my telescoping cover on, and I bring home my first batch of bees. I'm really excited. I brought home 5 frames of bees and I'm putting them into this bigger box. They don't have many guard bees yet. They don't have large numbers. So you can use something called an entrance reducer. It does exactly that. It reduces the entrance to that hive. Ones that you commonly get are a strip of wood that you can flip so that there is a very small opening that just allows a few bees in and out. That way your guard bees don't have to guard a very large area. And as your bees increase in numbers, then you can flip it over to the wider opening to give more access. The metal with the holes in it is a mouse guard. I put these on during the winter and it allows the bees in and out and it keeps the mice out of my hives. Ancillary equipment we're going to look at: smoker, hive tools, protective clothing, and feeders. There's the smoker. The goal of a smoker is to produce large quantities of cool, thick smoke, and we use it to disguise the alarm pheromone that bees produce when they're agitated. You pop that lid on that hive open and they see the light. You got to remember that hive is in pitch black, and here you come and here they come. Put a little smoke on them, it drives them down, keeps them a little bit more settled. Suitable smoker for fuels include wood shaving, bark, dry leaves, pine needles, burlap, baler twine. You want to make sure any twine or burlap you're using is not treated with something that's going to make your bees sick. For me, as a beekeeper, keeping a smoker lit was the bane of my existence. This is something to practice. I could get my smoker lit, but then I go down and get into my hives and it doesn't smoke anymore. This is the one thing where you can read it about it till the cows come home, but you've got to practice how to light a smoker. It is not as easy as it looks. Hive tools. Hive tools are a metal bar used for prying apart frames in a brood chamber or honey super, separating hive bodies and scraping away wax and propolis. Hive tools should be kept clean to prevent the spread of disease. This is a collection of hive tools I've gotten. I keep shiny new ones that I get at shows or conferences, and I call those my going out tools. If somebody is coming in to help you with your bees, when you're starting off here or any other time, their hive tools should not have funk and gunk on them. They should be shiny and clean. You do not want to transmit disease from hive A to hive B. There are different sizes and shapes of hive tools. You will find one that works best for you, that fits the best in your hand. And you want to have more than one because they have a way of, you put them down, if you don't have a cool belt with Phyllis with the magnet, They have a tendency just like to disappear. Protective clothing. You should always wear a bee veil when working bees. You do not want to get stung in your eye. It is a very, very dangerous thing. It's the one place you do not want to be stung. This is a very inexpensive hat with a veil that I got off of Amazon. If you notice underneath the arms of the shirt, there are elastic straps. You put the hat on, those elastic straps pull that veil down so the bees are not getting into your neck or your face. It's nice and cool. And then with this, you don't need any other protective clothing. When you first started working with bees, most of us do not have that inner sense of calm. When you work your bees, you need to be a ninja. You need to move slow. You need to take your time. You don't want to bang things around. But depending on your level of comfort, you can either wear a full suit like you see on the left. And if you notice on that full suit, there's different styles. This one unzips and the whole front of that veil on my face will drop down. You could wear a jacket, and on this one, I have to zip around to flip the whole head back on it. So I wear different things for different times. When I'm pulling honey, my bees are not happy. I want to have that full jacket on. Gloves. The goal of an experienced beekeeper is to be able to work bees with no gloves. That is, long as, you know, they're not in a bad mood or something hasn't been bothering them. But truly, if you work slowly and carefully, you should be okay. But as again, when you're first starting off, you do not have that inner calm confidence going on. There's many different styles of gloves. You can get them that come up over your elbows. You can get those that come around your wrist. You can use the green ones in the picture or nitrile, like the surgical gloves. And yes, they could sting through those, but rarely they don't. And with the bigger gloves, you can't feel as well. You're more clumsy with your fingers. You have a tendency to smush bees. But again, it's going to be practice makes perfect, and experience is going to give you confidence. Now, in the bottom here, I have a brand new pair of Apis tactical gloves. And as you can see, they've never been used. These other gloves are disgusting. So typically, I replace my gloves. I've washed them with soap and water, but typically I'll replace my gloves because the bees will sting those gloves and it leaves that pheromone on the gloves. So you can have many stingers on those, which can cause your bees to be agitated. You can use the trick of smoking your gloves with your smoker when you're working, but in all reality, those gloves in the picture are pretty gross. All right, when you get your new bees, you don't have a hive filled with pollen and honey and nectar. So typically, when you get your new bees, you're going to have to feed them. When you are feeding your bees, there are numerous options that you can use. Again, we're looking at things that are very inexpensive to things that are expensive. The top left picture is something called a Boardman feeder. Now, you fill that jar with sugar water, and then that opening slides into your beehive. And you have to be careful with these because if you have other bees outside, it can induce robbing. The top right picture, the one with the red bottom, is actually a feeder for chickens. And I take that when I started off, and I would put rocks or marbles in the bottom of that so the bees don't drown. And I would literally put an empty box on top of my frames and then cover it with the inner cover and fill that full of sugar water. The bottom left picture is a bucket, and that little hole in the top is mesh, like a screen mesh. And you fill that bucket with your sugar water, and you take that bucket and you invert it and sit it on top of your inner cover where that hole is, and the bees can feed through there. The bottom right is a feeder that I like They're more expensive though, and it sits directly on top of your brood box, and there's slats in there, and you could fill up both sides of that feeders with a couple gallons of sugar water. And then that little line that runs in the middle is an opening where the bees climb up through that. Then you put your inner cover over the top of that, and that way the bees are fed and there's not really any chance of robbing. All right, ladies, it's quiz time. All right, Phil, I'm done.